Part 3. Writings, Prose and Poems, Original and Translated. Historical Evolution of India. Om Tat Sat. Om Namo Bhagavate Ramakrishnaya. Nasatah Sat Jayate. Existence cannot be produced by non existence. Non existence can never be the cause of what exists. Something cannot come out of nothing. That the law of causation is omnipotent and knows no time or place when it did not exist is a doctrine as old as the Aryan race, sung by its ancient poet seers, formulated by its philosophers, and made the cornerstone upon which the Hindu man even of today builds his whole scheme of life. There was an inquisitiveness in the race to start with, which very soon developed into bold analysis, and though in the first attempt, the work turned out might be like the attempts with shaky hands of the future master sculptor, it very soon gave way to strict science, bold attempts, and startling results. Its boldness made these men search every brick of their sacrificial altars, scan, cement, and pulverize every word of their scriptures, arrange, rearrange, doubt, deny, or explain the ceremonies. It turned their gods inside out and assigned only a secondary place to their omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent creator of the universe, their ancestral father in heaven, or threw him altogether overboard as useless and started a world religion without him, with even now the largest following of any religion. It evolved the science of geometry from the arrangements of bricks to build various altars, and startled the world with astronomical knowledge that arose from the attempts accurately to time their worship and oblations. It made their contribution to the science of mathematics the largest of any race, ancient or modern, and to their knowledge of chemistry, of metallic compounds in medicine, their scale of musical notes, their invention of the bow instruments, all of great service in the building of modern European civilization. It led them to invent the science of building up the child mind through shining fables, of which every child in every civilized country learns in a nursery or a school and carries an impress through life. Behind and before this analytical keenness, covering it as in a velvet sheath, was the other great mental peculiarity of the race, poetic insight. Its religion, its philosophy, its history, its ethics, its politics were all inlaid in a flower bed of poetic imagery, the miracle of language which was called Sanskrit or perfected, lending itself to expressing and manipulating them better than any other tongue. The aid of melodious numbers was invoked even to express the hard facts of mathematics. This analytical power and the boldness of poetical visions, which urged it onward, are the two great internal causes in the makeup of the Hindu race. They together formed, as it were, the keynote to national character. This combination is what is always making the race press onwards beyond the senses. The secret of those speculations which are like the steel blades the artisans use to manufacture, cutting through bars of iron, yet pliable enough to be easily bent into a circle. They wrought poetry in silver and gold, the symphony of jewels, the maze of marble wonders, the music of colors, the fine fabrics which belong more to the fairyland of dreams than to the real, have back of them thousands of years of working of this national trait. Arts and sciences, even the realities of domestic life, are covered with a mass of poetical conceptions, which are pressed forward till the sensuous touches the supersensuous, and the real gets the rose hue of the unreal. The earliest glimpse we have of this race show it already in the possession of this characteristic, as an instrument of some use in its hands. Many forms of religion and society must have been left behind in the onward march, before we find the race as depicted in the scriptures, the Vedas. An organized pantheon, elaborate ceremonials, divisions of society into hereditary classes necessitated by a variety of occupations, a great many necessaries and a good many luxuries of life are already there. Most modern scholars are agreed that surroundings as to climate and conditions, purely Indian, were not yet working on the race. Onwards through several centuries, we come to a multitude surrounded by the snows of Himalayas on the north and the heat of the south, vast plains, interminable forests, through which mighty rivers roll their tides. We catch a glimpse of different races, Dravidians, Tatars, and Aboriginals, pouring in their quota of blood, of speech, of manners and religions. And at last, a great nation emerges to our view, still keeping the type of the Aryan, stronger, broader, and more organized by the assimilation. We find the central assimilative core giving its type and character to the whole mass, clinging on with great pride to its name of Aryan, and though willing to give other races the benefits of its civilization, it was by no means willing to admit them within the Aryan pale. The Indian climate again have a higher direction to the genius of the race. In a land where nature was propitious and yielded easy victories, the national mind started to grapple with and conquer the higher problems of life in the field of thought. Naturally, the thinker, the priest, became the highest class in the Indian society, and not the man of the sword. The priests again, even at the dawn of history, put most of their energy in elaborating rituals, and when the nation began to find the load of ceremonies and lifeless rituals too heavy, came the first philosophical speculations, and the royal race was the first to break through the maze of killing rituals. On the one hand, the majority of the priests, impelled by economical considerations, were bound to defend that form of religion which made their existence a necessity of society and assigned them the highest place in the scale of caste. On the other hand, the king caste, whose strong right hand guarded and guided the nation and who now found itself as leading in the higher thoughts also, were loath to give up the first place to men who only knew how to conduct a ceremonial. There were then others, recruited from both the priests and king castes, who ridiculed equally the ritualists and philosophers, declared spiritualism as fraud and priestcraft, and upheld the attainment of material comforts as the highest goal of life. The people, tired of ceremonials and wondering at the philosophers, joined in masses the materialists. This was the beginning of that caste question and that triangular fight in India between ceremonials, philosophy, and materialism, which has come down unsolved to our own days. The first solution of the difficulty attempted was by applying the eclecticism which from the earliest days had taught the people to see in differences the same truth in various garbs. The great leader of this school, Krishna, himself of royal race, and his sermon, the Gita, have after various vicissitudes brought about the upheavals of the Jains, the Buddhists, and other sects, fairly established themselves as prophet of India and the truest philosophy of life. Though the tension was toned down for the time, it did not satisfy the social wants which were among the causes, the claim of the king race to stand first in the scale of caste and the popular intolerance of priestly privilege. Krishna had opened the gates of spiritual knowledge and attainment to all, irrespective of sex or caste, but he left undisturbed the same problem on the social side. This again has come down to our own days, in spite of the gigantic struggle of the Buddhists, Vaishnavas, etc., to attain social equality for all. Modern India admits spiritual equality of all souls, but strictly keeps the social difference. Thus we find the struggle renewed all along the line in the 7th century before the Christian era and finally in the 6th, overwhelming the ancient order of things under Shakyamuni, the Buddha. In their reaction against the privileged priesthood, Buddhists swept off almost every bit of the old ritual of the Vedas, subordinated the gods of the Vedas to the position of servants to their own human saints, and declared the creator and supreme ruler as an invention of priestcraft and superstition. But the aim of Buddhism was reform of the Vedic religion by standing against ceremonials requiring offerings of animals, against hereditary caste and exclusive priesthood, and against belief in permanent souls. It never attempted to destroy that religion or overturn the social order. It introduced a vigorous method by organizing a class of sannyasins into a strong monastic brotherhood, and the Brahmavadinis into a body of nuns, by introducing images of saints in the place of altar fires. It is probable that the reformers had for centuries the majority of the Indian people with them. The older forces were never entirely pacified, but they underwent a good deal of modification during the centuries of Buddhistic supremacy. In ancient India, the centers of national life were always the intellectual and spiritual and not political. Of old, as now, political and social power has been always subordinated to spiritual and intellectual. The outburst of national life was round colleges of sages and spiritual teachers. We thus find the Samitis of the Panchalas, of the Kashyas of Varanasi, the Maithilas standing out as great centers of spiritual culture and philosophy, even in the Upanishads. Again, these centers in turn became the focus of political ambition of the various divisions of the Aryans. The great epic Mahabharata tells us of the war of the Kurus and Panchalas for supremacy over the nation, in which they destroyed each other. The spiritual supremacy veered round and centered in the east among the Magadhas and Maithilas, and after the Kuru-Panchala war, a sort of supremacy was obtained by the kings of Magadha. The Buddhist Reformation and its chief field of activity were also in the same eastern region, and when the Maurya kings, forced possibly by the bar sinister on their escutcheon, patronized and led the new movement, the new priest power joined hands with the political power of the empire of Pataliputra. The popularity of Buddhism and its fresh vigor made the Maurya kings the greatest emperors that India ever had. The power of the Maurya sovereigns made Buddhism that worldwide religion that we see even today. The exclusiveness of the old form of Vedic religions debarred it from taking ready help from outside. At the same time, it kept it pure and free from many debasing elements which Buddhism, in its propagandist zeal, was forced to assimilate. This extreme adaptability in the long run made Indian Buddhism lose almost all its individuality, and extreme desire to be of the people made it unfit to cope with the intellectual forces of the mother religion in a few countries. The Vedic party, in the meanwhile, got rid of a good deal of its most objectionable features, as animal sacrifice, and took lessons from the rival daughter in the judicious use of images, temple processions, and other impressive performances, and stood ready to take within her fold the whole empire of Indian Buddhism, already tottering to its fall. And the crash came with the Scythian invasions and the total destruction of the empire of Pataliputra. The invaders, already incensed at the invasion of their Central Asiatic home by the preachers of Buddhism, found in the sun worship of the Brahmins a great sympathy with their own solar religion, and when the Brahminist party were ready to adapt and spiritualize many of the customs of the newcomers, the invaders threw themselves heart and soul into the Brahminic cause. Then there is a veil of darkness and shifting shadows. There are tumults of war, rumors of massacres, and the next scene rises upon a new phase of things. The empire of Magadha was gone. Most of northern India was under the rule of petty chiefs, always at war with one another. Buddhism was almost extinct except in some eastern and Himalayan provinces and in the extreme south, and the nation, after centuries of struggle against the power of a hereditary priesthood, awoke to find itself in the clutches of a double priesthood of hereditary Brahmins and exclusive monks of the new regime, with all the powers of the Buddhistic organization and without their sympathy for the people. A renascent India, bought by the valor and blood of the heroic Rajputs, defined by the merciless intellect of a Brahmin from the same historical thought center of Mithila, led by a new philosophical impulse organized by Shankara and his bands of sannyasins, and beautified by the arts and literature of the courts of Malava, arose on the ruins of the old. The task before it was profound, problems vaster than any their ancestors had ever faced. A comparatively small and compact race of the same blood and speech and the same social and religious aspiration, trying to save its unity by unscalable walls around itself, grew huge by multiplication and addition during the Buddhistic supremacy, and it was divided by race, color, speech, spiritual instinct, and social ambitions into hopelessly jarring factions. And this had to be unified and welded into one gigantic nation. This task Buddhism had also come to solve, and had taken it up when the proportions were not so vast. So long it was a question of Aryanizing the other types that were pressing for admission, and thus, out of different elements, making a huge Aryan body. In spite of concessions and compromises, Buddhism was eminently successful and remained the national religion of India. But the time came when the allurements of sensual forms of worship, indiscriminately taken in, along with various low races, were too dangerous for the central Aryan core, and a longer contact would certainly have destroyed the civilization of Aryans. Then came a natural reaction for self-preservation, and Buddhism and separate sects ceased to live in most parts of its land of birth. The reaction movement, led in close succession by Kumarila in the north and Shankara and Ramanuja in the south, has become the last embodiment of that vast accumulation of sects and doctrines and rituals called Hinduism. For the last 1,000 years or more, its great task has been assimilation, with now and then an outburst of reformation. This reaction first wanted to revive the rituals of the Vedas, failing which it made the Upanishads or the philosophic portions of the Vedas its basis. It brought Vyasa's system of Mimamsa philosophy and Krishna's sermon, the Gita, to the forefront, and all succeeding movements have followed the same. The movement of Shankara forced its way through its high intellectuality, but it could be of little service to the masses because of its adherence to strict caste laws, very small scope for ordinary emotion, and making Sanskrit the only vehicle of communication. Ramanuja, on the other hand, with a most practical philosophy, a great appeal to the emotions, an entire denial of birthrights before spiritual attainments, and appeals through the popular tongue completely succeeded in bringing the masses back to the Vedic religion. The northern reaction of ritualism was followed by the fitful glory of the Malava Empire. With the destruction of that in a short time, northern India went to sleep, as it were, for a long period, to be rudely awakened by the thundering onrush of Mohammedan cavalry across the passes of Afghanistan. In the south, however, the spiritual upheaval of Shankara and Ramanuja was followed by the usual Indian sequence of united races and powerful empires. It was the home of refuge of Indian religion and civilization, when northern India from sea to sea lay bound at the feet of the Central Asiatic conquerors. The Mohammedan tried for centuries to subjugate the south, but can scarcely be said to have got even a strong foothold. And when the strong and united empire of the Mughals was very near completing its conquest, the hills and plateaus of the south poured in their bands of fighting peasant horsemen, determined to die for the religion which Ramdas preached and Tuka sang. And in a short time, the gigantic empire of the Mughals was only a name. The movements in northern India during the Mohammedan period are characterized by their uniform attempt to hold the masses back from joining the religion of the conquerors, which brought in its train social and spiritual equality for all. The friars of the orders founded by Ramananda, Kabir, Dadu, Chaitanya, or Nanak were all agreed in preaching the equality of man, however differing from each other in philosophy. Their energy was for the most part spent in checking the rapid conquest of Islam among the masses, and they had very little left to give birth to new thoughts and aspirations. Though evidently successful in their purpose of keeping the masses within the fold of the old religion and tempering the fanaticism of the Mohammedans, they were mere apologists, struggling to obtain permission to live. One great prophet, however, arose in the north, Govind Singh, the last guru of the Sikhs, with creative genius, and the result of his spiritual work was followed by the well-known political organization of the Sikhs. We have seen throughout the history of India, a spiritual upheaval is almost always succeeded by a political unity extending over more or less area of the continent, which in its turn helps to strengthen the spiritual aspiration that brings it to being. But the spiritual aspiration that preceded the rise of the Maharatha or the Sikh Empire was entirely reactionary. We seek in vain to find in the court of Poona or Lahore even a ray of reflection of that intellectual glory which surrounded the courts of the Mughals, much less the brilliance of Malava or Vidyanagara. It was intellectually the darkest period of Indian history, and both these meteoric empires, representing the upheaval of mass fanaticism and hating culture with all their hearts, lost all their motive power as soon as they had succeeded in destroying the rule of the hated Mohammedans. Then there came again a period of confusion. Friends and foes, the Mughal Empire and its destroyers, and the till then peaceful foreign traders, French and English, all joined in a melee of fight. For more than half a century there was nothing but war and pillage and destruction, and when the smoke and dust cleared, England was stalking victorious over the rest. There has been half a century of peace and law and order under the sway of Britain. Time alone will prove if it is the order of progress or not. There have been a few religious movements amongst the Indian people during the British rule, following the same line that was taken up by northern Indian sects during the sway of the Empire of Delhi. They are the voices of the dead or the dying, the feeble tones of a terrorized people, pleading for permission to live. They are ever eager to adjust their spiritual or social surroundings according to the tastes of the conquerors, if they are only left the right to live, especially the sects under the English domination, in which social differences with the conquering race are more glaring than the spiritual. The Hindu sects of the century seem to have set one ideal of truth before them, the approval of their English masters. No wonder that these sects have mushroom lives to live. The vast body of the Indian people religiously hold aloof from them, and the only popular recognition they get is the jubilation of the people when they die. But possibly, for some time yet, it cannot be otherwise. The story of the boy Gopala. Oh, mother, I am so afraid to go to school through the woods alone. Other boys have servants or somebody to bring them to school or take them home. Why cannot I have someone to bring me home? Thus said Gopala, a little Brahmin boy, to his mother one winter afternoon when he was getting ready for school. The school hours were in the morning and afternoon. It was dark when the school closed in the afternoon, and the path lay through the woods. Gopala's mother was a widow. His father, who had lived as a Brahmin should, never caring for the goods of the world, studying and teaching, worshipping and helping others to worship, died when Gopala was a baby. And the poor widow retired entirely from the concerns of the world, even from that little she ever had, her soul given entirely to God, and waiting patiently with prayers, fasting, and discipline for the great deliverer Death to meet in another life, him who was the eternal companion of her joys and sorrows, her partner in the good and evil of the beginningless chain of lives. She lived in her little cottage. A small rice field her husband received as sacred gift to learning brought her sufficient rice, and the piece of land that surrounded her cottage with its clumps of bamboos, a few coconut palms, a few mangoes and lychees, with the help of the kindly village folk, brought forth sufficient vegetables all the year round. For the rest, she worked hard every day for hours at the spinning wheel. She was up long before the rosy dawn touched the tufted heads of the palms, long before the birds had begun to wobble in their nests, and sitting on her bed, a mat on the ground covered with a blanket, repeated the sacred names of the holy women of the past, saluted the ancient sages, recited the sacred names of Narayana, the refuge of mankind, of Shiva, the merciful, of Tara, the Saviour Mother, and above all, she prayed to him whom her heart most loved, Krishna, who had taken the form of Gopala, a cowherd, to teach and save mankind, and rejoiced that by one day she was nearer to him who had gone ahead, and with him nearer by a day to him, the cowherd. Before the light of the day, she had her bath in the neighboring stream, praying that her mind might be made as clean by the mercy of Krishna as her body by the water. Then she put on her fresh-washed whiter cotton garment, collected some flowers, rubbed a piece of sandalwood on a circular stone with a little water to make a fragrant paste, gathered a few sweet-scented tulsi leaves, and retired into a little room in the cottage, kept apart for worship. In this room she kept her baby cowherd, on a small wooden throne under a small silk canopy, on a small velvet cushion, almost covered with flowers, was placed a bronze image of Krishna as a baby. Her mother's heart could only be satisfied by conceiving God as her baby. Many and many a time her learned husband had talked to her of him who is preached in the Vedas, the formless, the infinite, the impersonal. She listened with all attention, and the conclusion was always the same. What is written in the Vedas must be true. But oh, it was so immense, so far off, and she only a weak, ignorant woman. And then it was also written, "In whatsoever form one seeks me, I reach him in that form, for all mankind are but following the paths I laid down for them." And that was enough. She wanted to know no more. And there she was, all of the devotion, of faith, of love her heart was capable of, was there in Krishna, the baby cowherd, and all that heart entwined round the visible cowherd, this little bronze image. Then again she had heard, "Serve me as you would a being of flesh and blood, with love and purity, and I accept that all." So she served as she would a master, a beloved teacher, above all, as she would serve the apple of her eye, her only child, her son. So she bathed and dressed the image, burned incense before it, and for offering, oh, she was so poor. But with tears in her eyes, she remembered her husband reading from the books. "I accept with gladness even leaves and flowers, fruits and water, whatever is offered with love." And she offered, "Thou for whom the world of flowers bloom, accept my few common flowers. Thou who feedest the universe, accept my poor offerings of fruits. I am weak, I am ignorant. I do not know how to approach thee, how to worship thee, my God, my cowherd, my child. Let my worship be pure, my love for thee selfless, and if there is any virtue in worship, let it be thine. Grant me only love, love that never asks for anything, never seeks for anything but love." Perchance the mendicant in his morning call was singing in the little yard. Thy knowledge, man, I value not. It is thy love I fear. It is thy love that shakes my throne, brings God to human tear. For love, behold, the Lord of all, the formless, ever free, is made to take the human form, to play and live with thee. What learning they of Vrinda's groves, the herdsmen, ever got? What science, girls that milked the kine, they loved, and me they bought. Then in the divine, the mother heart found her earthly son Gopala, literally cowherd, named after the divine cowherd, and the soul which would almost mechanically move among its earthly surroundings, which as it were was constantly floating in a heavenly ether ready to drift away from contact of things material, found its earthly moorings in her child. It was the only thing left to her to pile all her earthly joys and love on. Were not her movements, her thoughts, her pleasures, her very life for that little one that bound her to life? For years she watched over the day-to-day unfolding of that baby life with all a mother's care, and now that he was old enough to go to school, how hard she worked for months to get the necessaries for the young scholar. The necessaries, however, were few. In a land where men contentedly passed their lives poring over books in the light of a mud lamp, with an ounce of oil in which is a thin cotton wick, a rush mat being the only furniture about them, the necessaries of a student are not many. Yet there were some, and even those cost many a day of hard work to the poor mother. How for days she toiled over her wheel to buy Gopala a new cotton dhoti and a piece of cotton chadar, the under and upper coverings, the small mat in which Gopala was to put his bundle of palm leaves for writing and his reed pens, and which he was to carry rolled up under his arm to be used as his seat at school, and the inkstand, and what joy to her it was, when on a day of good omen Gopala attempted to write his first letters. Only a mother's heart, a poor mother's, can know. But today there is a dark shadow in her mind. Gopala is frightened to go alone through the wood. Never before had she felt her widowhood, her loneliness, her poverty so bitter. For a moment it was all dark, but she recalled to her mind what she had heard of the eternal promise. Those that depend on me, giving up all other thoughts, to them I myself carry whatever is necessary. And she was one of the souls who could believe. So the mother wiped her tears and told her child that he need not fear, for in those woods lived another son of hers tending cattle, and also called Gopala, and if he was ever afraid passing through them, he had only to call on brother Gopala. The child was that mother's son, and he believed. That day, coming home from school through the wood, Gopala was frightened and called upon his brother Gopala, the cowherd. "Brother cowherd, are you here? Mother said you are, and I am to call on you. I am frightened being alone." And a voice came from behind the trees. "Don't be afraid, little brother. I am here. Go home without fear." Thus every day the boy called, and the voice answered. The mother heard of it with wonder and love, and she instructed her child to ask the brother of the wood to show himself the next time. The next day the boy, when passing through the woods, called upon his brother. The voice came as usual, but the boy asked the brother in the woods to show himself to him. The voice replied, "I am busy today, brother, and cannot come." But the boy insisted, and out of the shade of the trees came the cowherd of the woods, a boy dressed in the garb of cowherds, with a little crown on his head in which were peacock's feathers, and the cowherd's flute in his hands. And they were so happy. They played together for hours in the woods, climbing trees, gathering fruits and flowers, the widow's Gopala and the Gopala of the woods, till it was almost late for school. Then the widow's Gopala went to school with a reluctant heart, and nearly forgot all his lesson, his mind eager to return to the woods and play with his brother. Months passed this wise. The poor mother heard of it day by day, and in the joy of this divine mercy, forgot her widowhood, her poverty, and blessed her miseries 1,000 times. Then there came some religious ceremonies which the teacher had to perform in honor of his ancestors. These village teachers, managing alone a number of boys and receiving no fixed fees from them, have to depend a great deal upon presents when the occasion requires them. Each pupil brought in his share, in goods or money, and Gopala, the orphan, the widow's son, the other boys smiled a smile of contempt on him when they talked of the presents they were bringing. That night Gopala's heart was heavy, and he asked his mother for some present for the teacher, and the poor mother had nothing. But she determined to do what she had been doing all her life, to depend on the cowherd, and told her son to ask from his brother Gopala in the forests for some present for the teacher. The next day, after Gopala had met the cowherd boy in the woods as usual, and after they had some games together, Gopala told his brother of the forest the grief that was in his mind and begged him to give him something to present his teacher with. Brother Gopala, said the cowherd, I am only a cowherd, you see, and have no money, but take this pot of cream as from a poor cowherd and present it to your teacher. Gopala, quite glad that he now had something to give his teacher, more so because it was a present from his brother in the forest, hastened to the home of the teacher and stood with an eager heart behind a crowd of boys handing over their presents to the teacher. Many and varied were the presents they had brought, and no one thought of looking even at the present of the orphan. The neglect was quite disheartening. Tears stood in the eyes of Gopala, when by a sudden stroke of fortune, the teacher happened to take notice of him. He took the small pot of cream from Gopala's hand and poured the cream into a big vessel, when to his wonder the pot filled up again. Again he emptied the contents into a bigger vessel, again it was full, and thus it went on, the small pot filling up quicker than he could empty it. Then amazement took hold of everyone, and the teacher took the poor orphan in his arms and inquired about the pot of cream. Gopala told his teacher all about his brother cowherd in the forest, how he answered his call, how he played with him, and how at last he gave him the pot of cream. The teacher asked Gopala to take him to the woods and show him his brother of the woods, and Gopala was only too glad to take his teacher there. The boy called upon his brother to appear, but there was no voice even that day. He called again and again. No answer. And then the boy entreated his brother in the forest to speak, else the teacher would think he was not speaking the truth. Then came the voice as from a great distance. Gopala, thy mother's and thy love and faith brought me to thee, but tell thy teacher, he will have to wait a long while yet. My play is done. Written in the spring of 1895 in New York. Ever rising, ever falling with the waves of time, still rolling on I go. From fleeting scene to scene ephemeral, with life's currents ebb and flow. Oh, I am sick of this unending force. These shows they please no more. This ever running, never reaching, nor even a distant glimpse of shore. From life to life I am waiting at the gates. Alas, they open not. Dim are my eyes with vain attempt to catch one ray long sought. On little life's high, narrow bridge I stand and see below the struggling, crying, laughing throng. For what? No one can know. In front yon gates stand frowning dark and say, no farther way. This is the limit. Tempt not fate. Bear it as best you may. Go, mix with them and drink this cup, and be as mad as they. Who dares to know but comes to grief? Stop then, and with them stay. Alas for me, I cannot rest. This floating bubble, earth, its hollow form, its hollow name, its hollow death and birth. For me is nothing, how I long to get beyond the crust of name and form. Ah, ope the gates. To me they open must. Open the gates of light, O mother, to me thy tired son. I long, oh, long to return home. Mother, my play is done. You sent me out in the dark to play, and wore a frightful mask. Then hope departed, terror came, and play became a task. Tossed to and fro from wave to wave in this seething, surging sea, of passions strong and sorrows deep, grief is, and joy to be. Where life is living death, alas, and death, who knows but it is another start, another round of this old wheel of grief and bliss, where children dream bright, golden dreams, too soon to find them dust, and I look back to hope long lost, and life a mass of rust. Too late the knowledge age cloth gain, scars from the wheel we're gone, when fresh, young lives put their strength to the wheel, which thus goes on, from day to day and year to year. 'Tis but delusion's toy, false hope its motor, desire knave, its spokes are grief and joy. I go adrift and know not whither, Save me from this fire. Rescue me, merciful Mother, from floating with desire. Turn not to me thy awful face, 'tis more than I can bear. Be merciful and kind to me. To chide my faults forbear. Take me, O Mother, to those shores where strifes forever cease, beyond all sorrows, beyond tears, beyond even earthly bliss, whose glory neither sun nor moon, nor stars that twinkle bright, nor flash of lightning can express, they but reflect its light. Let never more delusive dreams veil off thy face from me. My play is done, O Mother, break my chains and make me free. The cup. This is your cup, the cup assigned to you from the beginning. Nay, my child, I know how much of that dark drink is your own brew, of fault and passion, ages long ago, in the deep years of yesterday, I know. This is your road, a painful road and drear. I made the stones that never give you rest. I set your friend in pleasant ways and clear, and he shall come like you unto my breast. But you, my child, must travel here. This is your task. It has no joy nor grace, but it is not meant for any other hand, and in my universe hath measured place. Take it. I do not bid you understand. I bid you close your eyes to see my face. A benediction. The mother's heart, the hero's will, the sweetness of the southern breeze, the sacred charm and strength that dwell on Aryan altars, flaming, free. All these be yours and many more. No ancient soul could dream before. Be thou to India's future son, the mistress, servant, friend in one. A hymn of creation. Existence was not then, nor non-existence. The world was not. The sky beyond was neither. What covered the mist? Of whom was that? What was in the depths of darkness thick? Death was not then, nor immortality. The night was neither separate from day, but motionless did that vibrate, alone, with its own glory one. Beyond that, nothing did exist. At first in darkness hidden darkness lay, undistinguished as one mass of water. Then that which lay in void thus covered, a glory did put forth by tapa. First desire rose, the primal seed of mind. The sages have seen all of this in their hearts, sifting existence from non-existence. Its rays above, below, and sideways spread. Creative then became the glory, with self-sustaining principle below and creative energy above. Who knew the way? Who there declared whence this arose? Projection whence? For after this projection came the gods. Who therefore knew indeed? Came out this whence? This projection whence arose, whether held or whether not. He the ruler in the supreme sky. Of this he, O Sharman, knows or knows not he perchance. On the sea's bosom. In blue sky floats a multitude of clouds, white, black, of snaky shades and thicknesses. An orange sun, about to say farewell, touches the massed cloud shapes with streaks of red. The wind blows as it lists a hurricane, now carving shapes, now breaking them apart. Fancies, colors, forms, inert creations, a myriad scenes, though real, yet fantastic. Their light clouds spread, heaping up spun cotton. See next a huge snake, then a strong lion. Again, behold a couple locked in love. All vanish at last in the vapory sky. Below the sea sings a varied music, but not grand, O India, nor ennobling. Thy waters, widely praised, murmur serene in soothing cadence, without a harsh roar. Hinduism and Sri Ramakrishna. By the word Shastras, the Vedas without beginning or end are meant. In matters of religious duty, the Vedas are the only capable authority. The Puranas and other religious scriptures are all denoted by the word Smriti, and their authority goes so far as they follow the Vedas and do not contradict them. Truth is of two kinds. One, that which is cognizable by the five ordinary senses of man and by reasonings based thereon. Two, that which is cognizable by the subtle, supersensuous power of yoga. Knowledge acquired by the first means is called science, and knowledge acquired by the second is called the Vedas. The whole body of supersensuous truths, having no beginning or end, and called by the name of the Vedas, is ever existent. The Creator Himself is creating, preserving, and destroying the universe with the help of these truths. The person in whom this supersensuous power is manifested is called a rishi, and the supersensuous truths which he realizes by this power are called the Vedas. This rishihood, this power of supersensuous perception of the Vedas, is real religion, and so long as this does not develop in the life of an initiate, so long is religion a mere empty word to him, and it is to be understood that he has not taken yet the first step in religion. The authority of the Vedas extends to all ages, climes, and persons. That is to say, their application is not confined to any particular place, time, and persons. The Vedas are the only exponent of the universal religion. Although the supersensuous vision of truths is to be met within some measure in our Puranas and Itihasas and in the religious scriptures of other races, still the fourfold scripture known among the Aryan race as the Vedas being the first, the most complete, and the most undistorted collection of spiritual truths, deserve to occupy the highest place among all scriptures, command the respect of all nations of the earth, and furnish the rationale of all their respective scriptures. With regard to the whole Vedic collection of truths discovered by the Aryan race, this also has to be understood that those portions alone which do not refer to purely secular matters and which do not merely record tradition or history or merely provide incentives to duty form the Vedas in the real sense. The Vedas are divided into two portions, the Jnana-kanda, knowledge portion, and the Karma-kanda, ritual portion. The ceremonies and the fruits of the Karma-kanda are confined within the limits of the world of Maya, and therefore they have been undergoing and will undergo transformation according to the law of change, which operates through time, space, and personality. Social laws and customs likewise, being based on this Karma-kanda, have been changing and will continue to change hereafter. Minor social usages also will be recognized and accepted when they are compatible with the spirit of the true scriptures and the conduct and example of holy sages. But blind allegiance only to usages such as are repugnant to the spirit of the Shastras and the conduct of holy sages has been one of the main causes of the downfall of the Aryan race. It is the Jnana-kanda or the Vedanta only that has for all time commanded recognition for leading men across Maya and bestowing salvation on them through the practice of yoga, bhakti, jnana, or selfless work. And as its validity and authority remain unaffected by any limitations of time, place, or persons, it is the only exponent of the universal and eternal religion for all mankind. The Samhitas of Manu and other sages, following the lines laid down in the Karma-kanda, have mainly ordained rules of conduct conducive to social welfare, according to the exigencies of time, place, and persons. The Puranas, etc., have taken up the truths embedded in the Vedanta and have explained them in detail in the course of describing the exalted life and deeds of avatars and others. They have each emphasized, besides, some out of the infinite aspects of the Divine Lord to teach men about them. But when by the process of time, fallen from the true ideals and rules of conduct and devoid of the spirit of renunciation, addicted only to blind usages, and degraded in intellect, the descendants of the Aryans failed to appreciate even the spirit of these Puranas, etc., which taught men of ordinary intelligence the abstruse truths of the Vedanta in concrete form and diffuse language, and appeared antagonistic to one another on the surface, because of each inculcating with special emphasis only particular aspects of the spiritual ideal. And when, as a consequence, they reduced India, the fair land of religion, to a scene of almost infernal confusion by breaking up piecemeal the one eternal religion of the Vedas, Sanatana Dharma, the grand synthesis of all the aspects of the spiritual ideal, into conflicting sects and by seeking to sacrifice one another in the flames of sectarian hatred and intolerance. Then it was that Sri Bhagavan Ramakrishna incarnated himself in India to demonstrate what the true religion of the Aryan race is, to show where amidst all its many divisions and offshoots scattered over the land in the course of its immemorial history lies the true unity of the Hindu religion, which by its overwhelming number of sects discordant to superficial view, quarreling constantly with each other and abounding in customs divergent in every way, has constituted itself a misleading enigma for our countrymen and the butt of contempt for foreigners, and above all to hold up before men for their lasting welfare as a living embodiment of the Sanatana Dharma, his own wonderful life into which he infused the universal spirit and character of this Dharma, so long cast into oblivion the process of time, in order to show how the Vedic truths, eternally existent as the instrument with the Creator in his work of creation, preservation, and dissolution, reveal themselves spontaneously in the minds of the rishis, purified from all impressions of worldly attachment, and because such verification and confirmation of the scriptural truths will help the revival, reinstatement, and spread of religion, the Lord, though the very embodiment of the Vedas, in this his new incarnation has thoroughly discarded all external forms of learning. That the Lord incarnates again and again in human form for the protection of the Vedas, or the true religion, and of Brahminhood, or the ministry of that religion, is a doctrine well established in the Puranas, etc. The waters of a river falling in a cataract acquire greater velocity. The rising wave after a hollow swells higher. So after every spell of decline, the Aryan society, recovering from all the evils by the merciful dispensation of Providence, has risen the more glorious and powerful. Such is the testimony of history. After rising from every fall, our revived society is expressing more and more its innate eternal perfection, and so also the omnipresent Lord in each successive incarnation is manifesting himself more and more. Again and again has our country fallen into a swoon, as it were, and again has India's Lord, by the manifestation of himself, revivified her. But greater than the present deep dismal night, now almost over, no pall of darkness had ever before enveloped this holy land of ours. And compared with the depth of this fall, all previous falls appear like little hoof marks. Therefore, before the effulgence of this new awakening, the glory of all past revivals in her history will pale like stars before the rising sun. And compared with this mighty manifestation of renewed strength, all the many past epochs of such restoration will be as child's play. The various constituent ideals of the religion eternal, during its present state of decline, have been lying scattered here and there for want of competent men to realize them, some being preserved partially among small sects and some completely lost. But strong in the strength of this new spiritual renaissance, men, after reorganizing these scattered and disconnected spiritual ideals, will be able to comprehend and practice them in their own lives, and also to recover from oblivion those that are lost. And as the sure pledge of this glorious future, the all-merciful Lord has manifested in the present age, as stated above, an incarnation which in point of completeness in revelation, its synthetic harmonizing of all ideals, and its promoting of every sphere of spiritual culture, surpasses the manifestations of all past ages. So at the very dawn of this momentous epoch, the reconciliation of all aspects and ideals of religious thought and worship is being proclaimed. This boundless, all-embracing idea had been lying inherent, but so long concealed, in the religion eternal and its scriptures, and now rediscovered, it is being declared to humanity in a trumpet voice. This epochal new dispensation is the harbinger of great good to the whole world, especially to India, and the inspirer of this dispensation, Sri Bhagavan Ramakrishna, is the reformed and remodeled manifestation of all the past great epoch makers in religion. O man, have faith in this and lay to heart. The dead never return. The past night does not reappear. A spent-up tidal wave does not rise anew. Neither does man inhabit the same body over again. So from the worship of the dead past, O man, we invite you to the worship of the living present. From the regretful brooding over bygones, we invite you to the activities of the present. From the waste of energy in retracing lost and demolished pathways, we call you back to broad new-laid highways lying very near. He that is wise, let him understand. Of that power, which at the very first impulse has roused distant echoes from all the four quarters of the globe, conceive in your mind the manifestation in its fullness, and discarding all idle misgivings, weaknesses, and the jealousies characteristic of enslaved peoples, come and help in the turning of this mighty wheel of new dispensation, with the conviction firmly rooted in your heart that you are the servants of the Lord, His children, helpers in the fulfillment of His purpose. Enter the arena of work. The Bengali language, written for the Udbodhan. In our country, owing to all learning being in Sanskrit from the ancient times, there has arisen an immeasurable gulf between the learned and the common folk. All the great personages, from Buddha down to Chaitanya and Ramakrishna, who came for the well-being of the world, taught the common people in the language of the people themselves. Of course, scholarship is an excellent thing, but cannot scholarship be displayed through any other medium than a language that is stiff and unintelligible, that is unnatural and merely artificial? Is there no room for art in the spoken language? What is the use of creating an unnatural language to the exclusion of the natural one? Do you not think out your scholastic researches in the language which you are accustomed to speak at home? Why then do you introduce such a queer and unwieldy thing when you proceed to put them in black and white? The language in which you think out philosophy and science in your mind and argue with others in public, is not that the language for writing philosophy and science? If it is not, how then do you reason out those truths within yourselves and in company of others in that very language? The language in which we naturally express ourselves, in which we communicate our anger, grief, or love, etc., there cannot be a fitter language than that. We must stick to that idea, that manner of expression, that diction and all. No artificial language can ever have that force and that brevity and expressiveness, or admit of being given any turn you please, as that spoken language. Language must be made like pure steel. Turn and twist it any way you like. It is again the same. It cleaves a rock in twain at one stroke, without its edge being turned. Our language is becoming artificial by imitating the slow and pompous movement, and only that, of Sanskrit. And language is the chief means and index of a nation's progress. If you say, it is all right, but there are various kinds of dialects in different parts of Bengal, which of them to accept? The answer is, we must accept that which is gaining strength and spreading through natural laws, that is to say, the language of Calcutta. East or west, from wheresoever people may come, once they breathe in the air of Calcutta, they are found to speak the language in vogue there. So nature herself points out which language to write in. The more railroads and facilities of communication there are, the more will the difference of east and west disappear. And from Chittagong to Baidyanath, there will be that one language, which is that of Calcutta. It is not the question which district possesses a language most approaching Sanskrit. You must see which language is triumphing. When it is evident that the language of Calcutta will soon become the language of the whole of Bengal, then if one has to make the written and spoken language the same, one would, if one is intelligent enough certainly, make the language of Calcutta one's foundation. Here local jealousies also should be thrown overboard. Where the welfare of the whole province is concerned, you must overlook the claims to superiority of your own district or village. Language is the vehicle of ideas. It is the ideas that are of prime importance. Language comes after. Does it look well to place a monkey on a horse that has trappings of diamonds and pearls? Just look at Sanskrit. Look at the Sanskrit of the Brahmanas. At Shabara Swami's commentary on the Mimamsa philosophy, the Mahabhashya of Patanjali, and finally at the great commentary of Acharya Shankara. And look also at the Sanskrit of comparatively recent times. You will at once understand that so long as a man is alive, he talks a living language, but when he is dead, he speaks a dead language. The nearer death approaches, the more does the power of original thinking wane. The more is there the attempt to bury one or two rotten ideas under a heap of flowers and scents. Great God! What a parade they make! After 10 pages of big adjectives, all on a sudden you have, there lived the king. Oh, what an array of spun-out adjectives, and giant compounds, and skillful puns! They are symptoms of death. When the country began to decay, then all these signs became manifest. It was not merely in language. All the arts began to manifest them. A building now neither expressed any idea nor followed any style. The columns were turned and turned till they had all their strength taken out of them. The ornaments pierced the nose and the neck and converted the wearer into a veritable ogress. But oh, the profusion of leaves and foliage carved fantastically in them. Again, in music, nobody, not even the sage Bharata, the originator of dramatic performances, could understand whether it was singing or weeping or wrangling, and what meaning or purpose it sought to convey. And what an abundance of intricacies in that music! What labyrinths of flourishes! Enough to strain all one's nerves. Over and above that, that music had its birth in the nasal tone uttered through the teeth compressed, in imitation of the Mohammedan musical experts. Nowadays, there is an indication of correcting these. Now will people gradually understand that a language or art or music that expresses no meaning and is lifeless is of no good. Now they will understand that the more strength is infused into the national life, the more will language, art, and music, etc., become spontaneously instinct with ideas and life. The volume of meaning that a couple of words of everyday use will convey, you may search in vain in 2000 set epithets. Then every image of the deity will inspire devotion, every girl decked in ornaments will appear to be a goddess, and every house and room and furniture will be animated with the vibration of life. Matter for serious thought. A man presented himself to be blessed by a sight of the deity. He had an access of joy and devotion at the sight, and perhaps to pay back the good he received, he burst out into a song. In one corner of the hall, reclining against a pillar, was Chobeji dozing. He was the priest in the temple, an athlete, a player on the guitar, was a good hand in swallowing 2 jugfuls of bhang, and had various other qualifications besides. All on a sudden, a dreadful noise assailing his tympanum, the fantastic universe conjured up under the influence of the inebriating liquor vanished for a moment from Chobeji's enormous chest of 2 inches. And casting his crimson-tinged, languid eyes around in search of the cause of disturbance to his tranquil mind, Chobeji discovered that in front of the god was a man singing, overwhelmed with his own feelings, in a tune as touching as the scouring of cauldrons in a festive house. And in so doing, he was subjecting the shades of the whole host of musical masters like Narada, Bharata, Hanuman, Nayaka, and the rest to ineffable anguish. The mortified Chobeji, in a sharp reprimanding tone, addressed the man who had been the direct obstacle to his enjoyment of that particular bliss of inebriation. "Hello, my friend, what are you shouting like that for, without caring for time or tune?" Quick came the response. "What need I care for time or tune? I am trying to win the Lord's heart." "Humph," retorted Chobeji. "Do you think the Lord is such a fool? You must be mad. You could not win my heart even, and has the Lord less brains than I? The Lord has declared unto Arjuna, 'Take thou refuge in me, thou hast nothing else to do, and I shall deliver thee.'" Bhola Chand is mighty glad to hear this from some people. He now and then yells out in a trenchant note, "I have taken refuge in the Lord. I shall not have to do anything further." Bhola Chand is under the impression that it is the height of devotion to bawl out those words repeatedly in the harshest tone possible. Moreover, he does not fail to make it known now and then in the aforesaid pitch that he is ever ready to lay down his life even for the Lord's sake, and that if the Lord does not voluntarily surrender himself to this tie of devotion, everything would be hollow and false. And a few foolish satellites of his also share the same opinion. But Bhola Chand is not prepared to give up a single piece of wickedness for the sake of the Lord. Well, is the Lord really such a fool? Why, this is not enough to hoodwink us even. Bholapuri, an out-and-out Vedantin, in everything he is careful to trumpet his Brahminhood. If all people are about to starve for food around Bholapuri, it does not touch him even in the least. He expounds the unsubstantiality of pleasure and pain. If through disease or affliction or starvation people die by the 1,000, what matters even that to him? He at once reflects on the immortality of the soul. If the strong overpower the weak and even kill them before his very eyes, Bholapuri is lost in the profound depths of the meaning of the spiritual dictum, The soul neither kills nor is killed. He is exceedingly averse to action of any kind. If hard pressed, he replies that he finished all actions in his previous births. But Bholapuri's realization of unity of the self suffers a terrible check when he is hurt in one point. When there is some anomaly in the completeness of his bhiksha, or when the householder is unwilling to offer him worship according to his expectations, then in the opinion of Puriji, there are no more despicable creatures on earth than householders, and he is at a loss to make out why the village that failed to offer adequate worship to him should even for a moment add to the world's burden. He too has evidently thought the Lord more foolish than ourselves. I say, Ramcharan, you have neither education nor the means to set up a trade, nor are you fit for physical labor. Besides, you cannot give up indulging in intoxications, nor do away with your wickednesses. Tell me, how do you manage to make your living? Ramcharan, that is an easy job, sir. I preach unto all. What has Ramcharan taken the Lord for? The city of Lucknow is astir with the festivities of the Muharram. The gorgeous decorations and illumination in the principal mosque, the Imambara, know no bounds. Countless people have congregated. Hindus, Mohammedans, Christians, Jews, all sorts of people, men, women, and children of all races and creeds have crowded today to witness the Muharram. Lucknow is the capital of the Shias, and wailings in the name of the illustrious Hassan and Hussein rend the skies today. Who was there whose heart was not touched by the lamentation and beating of breasts that took place in this mournful occasion? The tale of the Karbala, now 1,000 years old, has been renovated today. Among this crowd of spectators were two Rajput gentlemen who had come from a far-off village to see the festival. The Thakur Sahibs were, as is generally the case with village zamindars, landlords, innocent of learning. That Mohammedan culture, the shower of euphuistic phraseology with its nice and correct pronunciation, the varieties of fashionable dress, the loose-fitting cloaks and tight trousers and turbans, of 100 different colors to suit the taste of the townsfolk, all these had not yet found their way to such a remote village to convert the Thakur Sahibs. The Thakurs were therefore simple and straightforward, always fond of hunting, stalwart and hardy, and of exceedingly tough hearts. The Thakurs had crossed the gate and were about to enter the mosque when the guard interrupted them. Upon inquiring into the reasons, he answered, "Look here, this giant figure that you see standing by the doorway, you must give it 5 kicks first, and then you can go in." "Who is the statue, pray?" "It is the statue of the nefarious Yezid who killed the illustrious Hassan and Hussein 1,000 years ago. Therefore is this crying and this mourning." The guard thought that after this elaborate explanation, the statue of Yezid was sure to merit 10 kicks instead of 5. But mysterious are the workings of karma, and everything was sadly misunderstood. The Thakurs reverentially put their scarves round their neck and prostrated and rolled themselves at the feet of the statue of Yezid, praying with faltering accents. "What is the use of going in any more? What other gods need be seen? Bravo, Yezid, thou alone art the true God. Thou hast thrashed the rascals so well that they are weeping till now." There is the towering temple of the eternal Hindu religion, and how many ways of approaching it, and what can you not find there? From the absolute Brahman of the Vedantin down to Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, Uncle Sun, the rat-riding Ganesha, and the minor deities such as Shashti and Makal, and so forth, which is lacking there. And in the Vedas, in the Vedanta and the philosophies, in the Puranas and the Tantras, there are lots of materials, a single sentence of which is enough to break one's chain of transmigration forever. And oh, the crowd! Millions and millions of people are rushing towards the temple. I too had a curiosity to see and join in the rush. But what was this that met my eyes when I reached the spot? Nobody was going inside the temple. By the side of the door, there was a standing figure with 50 heads, 100 arms, 200 bellies, and 500 legs, and everyone was rolling at the feet of that. I asked one for the reason and got the reply, "Those deities that you see in the interior, it is worship enough for them to make a short prostration or throw in a few flowers from a distance. But the real worship must be offered to him who is at the gate, And those Vedas, the Vedanta, and the philosophies, the Puranas, and other scriptures that you see, there is no harm if you hear them, read now and then, but you must obey the mandate of this one. Then I asked again, well, what is the name of this god of gods? He is named Popular Custom, came the reply. I was reminded of the Thakur Sahibs and exclaimed, Bravo, Popular Custom! Thou hast thrashed them so well, etc. Gurgure Krishnavyal Bhattacharya is a vastly learned man who has the knowledge of the whole world at his finger ends. His frame is a skeleton. His friends say it is through the rigors of his austerities, but his enemies ascribe it to want of food. The wicked, again, are of opinion that such a physique is but natural to one who has a dozen issues every year. However that may be, there is nothing on earth that Krishnavyal does not know. Specially, he is omniscient about the flow of electric magnetic currents all over the human body, from the hair tuft to its furthest nook and corner. And being possessed of this esoteric knowledge, he is incomparably the best authority for giving a scientific explanation all things. From a certain earth used in the worship of the goddess Durga, down to the reasonable age of puberty of a girl being 10, and sundry inexplicable and mysterious rites pertaining to allied matters. And as for adducing precedents, well, he has made the thing so clear that even boys could understand it. There is forsooth no other land for religion than India, and within India itself, none but the Brahmins have the qualification for understanding religion, and among Brahmins too, all others excepting the Krishnavyal family are as nothing, and of these latter again, Gurgure has the preeminent claim. Therefore, whatever Gurgure Krishnavyal says is self-evident truth. Learning is being cultivated to a considerable extent, and people are becoming a bit conscious and active, so that they want to understand and taste everything. So Krishnavyal is assuring everybody, discard all fear. Whatever doubts are arising in your minds, I am giving scientific explanations for them. You remain just as you were. Sleep to your heart's content, and never mind anything else. Only, don't forget my honorarium. The people exclaimed, Oh, what a relief! What a great danger did really confront us! We should have had to sit up, and walk, and move. What a pest! So they said, Long live Krishnavyal, and turned on one side on the bed once more. The habit of 1,000 years was not to go so soon. The body itself would resent it. The inveterate obtuseness of the mind of 1,000 years was not to pass away at a moment's notice. And is it not for this that the Krishnavyal class are held in repute? Bravo, habit! Thou hast thrashed them so well, etc. Shiva's demon. Baron K. lived in a district of Germany. Born in all aristocratic family, he inherited high rank, honor, and wealth even in early youth. Besides, he was highly cultured and endowed with many accomplishments. A good many charming, affluent, and young women of rank craved for his love. And which father or mother does not wish for a son-in-law of such parts, culture, handsomeness, social position, lineage, and youthful age? An aristocratic beauty had attracted Baron K. also, but the marriage was still far off. In spite of all rank and wealth, Baron K. had none to call his own, except a sister who was exquisitely beautiful and educated. The Baron had taken a vow that he would marry only after his sister had chosen her fiancé, and the marriage celebrated with due éclat and rich dowries from him. She had been the apple of her parents' eyes. Baron K. did not want to enjoy a married life before her wedding. Besides, the custom in this Western country is that the son does not live in his father's or in any relative's family after marriage. The couple lives separately. It may be possible for the husband to live with his wife in his father-in-law's house, but a wife will never live in her father-in-law's. So K. postponed his marriage till his sister's. For some months, K. had no news of his sister. Foregoing the life of ease, comfort, and happiness in a palace served by a big retinue, and snatching herself from the affection of her only brother, she had absconded. All search had been in vain. That brought K. untold sorrow. He had no more any relish for the pleasures of life. He was ever unhappy and dejected. His relatives now gave up all hope of the sister's return, and tried to make the Baron cheerful. They were very anxious about him, and his fiancée was ever full of apprehension. It was the time of the Paris exhibition. The elite of all countries assembled there. The art treasures and artistic products were brought to Paris from all quarters. Baron Kay's relatives advised him to go to Paris, where his despondent heart would regain its normal health and buoyancy once it was in contact with that active, invigorating current of joy. The Baron bowed down to their wishes and started for Paris with his